just fine. I thank God, alright. I also thank God for you. So today I'm going to talk about unity in diversity. Alright. So probably if I will say there are some people who have got an issue or probably feel as though people being different and doing their unique things or doing purposes or performing their purposes that are unique and different from them is as though it's wrong, or probably it feels wrong to them or looks wrong to them, or they consider it uh, unacceptable by them, or probably they view it as though it's a wrong thing happening, alright? But we must be able to understand that God essentially created things in diversity, right? He created things in their own kind, and even in those kinds, those things are different, right? He did not purpose that there should be any existing thing that is exactly the same as another. And even as the word of God says that who is able to fathom or right the mind of God, that his thoughts are not our thoughts, his ways are not our ways. As the heavens are far from the earth, so are his thoughts far from ours. And you can imagine that God has created the universe, and as we know that Earth itself is in a galaxy called the Milky Way, if I'm not mistaken, and there are many galaxies out there. So you can imagine how diverse creation is, and in only Earth itself, there is diverse creations, right? But anyway, when God creates the soul of man, or man as a soul, he intends that that man, right, or that creation be unique, right? Because he intends to create everything with purpose, right? Nothing just happens, or nothing ought to just happen accidentally. Though that we were given power to create as God has created, and we continue the creation of God, and sometimes we make mistakes, but even in those mistakes, the system or the blueprint follows or probably applies, right? So the uniqueness of God still continues to portray itself, right? So everyone who is created, or we who are created, we are created being unique in our own way, right? Though we might be similar in some ways, probably we might seem to want to do things the same way as others, but we are meant to be unique, right? Sometimes even most of us who seek to do things the same way as others fall into error and mistake, because in so doing, we most often do not fulfill our own purpose, right? Because all we ought to continually seek is to know or acknowledge what is that purpose, what is that uniqueness that I have, right? What should I be actually accomplishing, right? Rather than trying to copy and paste other people's work, or right, or try to be identical to another person, which is quite impossible if you look at it. Because even twins who are born identical, right, they are different in so many ways, right? They are different, their lives are different, right? Though they might be similar in most ways, right? Such as their looks, but they have got differences, right? Nothing is identical to another thing unless it's a machine or probably something human-made, right? Or something programmed, right? But as long as it's God's creation, there is uniqueness, right? So people by nature will tend to go their way or their own way to fulfill their purpose. It is something coded in them, right? In their soul. It is something coded in their DNA, or let's say it is something that is just engraved in them, right? So that even though probably for some time they might be doing something that is out of their purpose, but a time comes when they just do things that they were meant to do. Something just starts to cry out in them, right? To start to do something that they were meant to be doing, right? Or to start to seek out what exactly was I meant to be doing, right? And because there also comes a time in a person's life where things start to fail, when you find yourself that you are out of line of your purpose, things start to crash or fall out of place, right? You start to feel out of place, you start to feel left out, and you start to ask yourself, what exactly should I be doing, right? And once you find that purpose, you find that after some time, when you persist in that purpose, things start to align up and you start to find joy and happiness, right? Because you are fulfilling the purpose and God's will for your life, all right? So these people who are fighting against others just because they are not doing what they expect them to be doing, just because they are being different, right? And sometimes the purpose or the uniqueness stands out very much in some people, right? So that they can be viewed as different, or probably they may be mistaken or misunderstood, right? But it's just God's doing and God's creation, all right? So we ought to allow uniqueness, right? We ought to allow people to be unique in their own way. We ought not to feel as though they are doing something wrong, because also whatever we are doing is a uniqueness pertaining to us, right? So why should we try to confine others to be doing things the way we expect them to do, or just because they are being in a way? I'm not talking about things that are immoral or out of ethics or out of the law of God. I'm talking about what God has created, right, and what God has allowed. Sometimes it may be out of the realm of our expectation, all right? But you have got to allow it, because probably there ought to be a reason. If you see something happening and you have not caused it to happen, probably there is a reason why something is happening, or probably there is something that is driving nothing to happen, right? So if we allow the diversity to take place, right, we probably might in time see the results of what we were insecure about, right? Probably whatever is happening is trying to bring out something new that we were expecting and something that will be beneficial. So if we block it out, we might not be able to see the result or the end result of that diversity, right? So we ought to be inclusive of newness, right? We ought to be ready to perceive what new thing God will be able to do among us, around us, right? In our friends, in our mates, right? So that we ought not to be enclosed in our thoughts, in our thinking, because the mind of God is quite complex, more than you can imagine, right? It is God. Sometimes He does things that are out of our imagination, right? And also, this diversity is meant to bring unification, right? Which now brings that aspect, the aspect of unity in diversity. You find that even the body itself, your body, has got different members or different parts. When they work together, when they come together, they form one unit called that body, right? And so in the same way, when people are out there fulfilling their different purposes, they move in to their niches, right? And they pull those strings, right? They work out those things, and eventually at the end of the result, or at the end of the day, you find that we have accomplished a task in those diversities, right? We have done something, or something has been done in unison, but previously it was in diversity. Previously it looked as though it was division, right? Previously it looked as though it was working against one another, but in the result of it, it worked something that unified, right? Because if everyone worked in a certain purpose, or if everyone did one thing, who will do the other thing, right? And sometimes we may not determine what or know what that other thing is, because it will be something that has not yet been revealed yet. It could be something that is in the future and is coming out now, right? And so if we allow ourselves not to experience that diversity, or to experience that change or that uniqueness, we might be denying ourselves a chance to see or to acknowledge or to perceive that new thing that is coming about, all right? And also sometimes, even in our denial of refraining that diversity, we will not always, or we cannot continually restrict it, right? Because eventually it will come out, because we have seen that it is God's doing. Diversity is a work of God, right? It's a doing of God. So probably, even though we might resist it for some time, or for quite some time, but you cannot resist God, right? eventually you will run out of resources. Eventually you will tire out, right? Eventually you will slumber and fall out of the way, because there is a force that is causing that diversity or that uniqueness to come about. And that is God's work. And you cannot fight against God, right? So just be easy and allow things to happen that are out of your control, right? Or probably just trust in God, right? Even though you do not understand it, even though you do not know how it's going to turn out, but it's nature, right? So we can only trust, we can only pray and ask that rightness be fulfilled, right? But we cannot all be out there being in denial and seeking that things remain traditional or as we are used to them, right? Because God does not stay on one place, right? God performs change now and then, all right? God is a God of newness. And even in the beginning, those beginning times, right? Whereby we find that people previously spoke one language throughout the world, right? But this singleness led them to want to rise to the seat of God, right? They wanted to come together and build a tower to get to God, right? So this oneness actually caused them to fall, or caused them to transgress, right? Or caused them to blaspheme, right? So God increased the diversity, right? By corrupting, if I will use that word, corrupting their language, so that they will now be speaking different languages and not understanding one another at that moment exactly, right? So we find that God increased the diversity so that they will stop thinking in one way or doing things the same way, right? So that if they do not understand each other, if they speak different languages, then they will start to diversify in other purposes, right? And stop focusing on transgressing against the Maker, all right? So you see, that is the doing of God, right? And of course, God uses the people He has created also to continue to make changes and continue in the diversity work, right? You find that people create borders, they continue to make boundaries, right? And even as authority is from God, also this works that you know not how they come about. You do not know how people get these ideas because they are from God, right? But also, even as we know that even in the end time, before the world shall end, there shall come about the oneness again. So this oneness that God dispersed by causing there to be many languages, man shall come again to restore it, or they shall seek to restore the oneness which God had destroyed in the beginning, and which will also lead now to the end of the world. All right. So you find that men will now come together again as that time in the Tower of Babel, right? And they will rise against God in that single language, right? Who knows, right? So whatever the single language will be, right? So you find that right now we have got the internet, which is an interconnectivity, right? So the whole world is connected through this system called the internet. Whether it's going to be that, but also probably the internet could be just a tool for that which should come, right? Probably it is some technology, right? We find that anyway, but the technology that man has continued to make will eventually be the cause of the demise, right? So it's quite interesting, right? Right now we have got AI and robots, which man themselves have determined that they might lead to the end of the world. They might lead to the annihilation of man who has created that or these things, all right? But anyway, the Lord is together with us, even as He's declared in His word that He shall be together with us till the end of the age. So the Lord knows the end, even as He is the beginning. Even as He was in the beginning, He knows how it shall end, right? And those that are in the Lord, He shall save them, right? He shall save the elect, right? And so anyway, comfort or safety is in the Lord, in Christ Jesus. So if you are there, if you are one of those people who are resisting diversity, right? Who are feeling that as though probably people should be doing what you feel that they should be doing, or you feel as though you are threatened by diversity. So just snap out of that and clear that mind, remove the old mind, and appreciate the new. Yes, right? Appreciate the change, appreciate the diversity, because even though you might not be able to determine how it shall end, but God is in control, right? And eventually, if you just allow the diversity that God has caused to carry on, we might even be able to see the result of it, right? And probably it might be a good thing that we are denying ourselves to see or to have or to experience. So, unity in diversity. Be blessed.